everyone, and welcome back to the Heal with Kat podcast. My name is Kat, and I am your host, and I'm so excited to welcome you to this week's episode where I interview Dr. David Bilstrom, who is an expert in autoimmune disease, women's health, and honestly, so much more. I mean, I have a whole list here. What do we not talk about on this week's episode? Dr. David Bilstrom is a highly intuitive and very balanced practitioner in the way that he works, and you'll hear that in the episode today. He's a quadruple board certified MD and medical director of International Autoimmune Institute. Dr. Bilstrom has helped thousands of chronically ill patients reverse autoimmune disease, which the science data also says prevents future disease, because he treats at the root cause. He spent almost 30 years striving to treat people using protocols that don't create more disease. You are going to be blown away by the information of his discovery in his professional career and even in his personal life of how he's come to be treating mostly women with autoimmune disease, specifically around the way that emotional trauma that gets passed down generationally has an effect on us physically, and how he says that autoimmune disease is actually more of a precursor for cancer than anything else because we're navigating survival energy in the body and we're navigating inflammation and dysbiosis on so many different levels. Dr. David Bilstrom is the director of the International Autoimmune Institute and the Bingham Memorial Center for Functional Medicine, the first medical center in the country associated with a teaching hospital to treat all types of autoimmune disease. It is the first to use nature and its ability to improve human health and well-being as an integral part of the wellness program. He's a functional medicine expert who is passionate about helping kids reset their epigenetics before age 19 to prevent chronic disease and helping kids and adults optimize their epigenetics to improve the health of the next 6 to 8 generations. This is going to be a wonderful episode for you guys to listen to, especially if you're someone like me who is deeply passionate about breaking cycles emotionally and physically, creating health in your body emotionally and physically, and not passing things on in the future emotionally and physically. And he says something so interesting at the end of the episode that really resonated with me. And he goes, all of these things that we've created in our minds that are separate when it comes to being healthy, they're not separate. They're deeply intertwined together. So take note that this week's episode is highly scientific in nature. I mean, he has a lot of studies and data and just really cool statistics that are really going to back a lot of the stuff that he's teaching people about. And also, he does get to the emotional parts of it as well. So I think it's just going to be a really great episode. If you're interested in things like estrogen dominance, survival mode in our bodies, epigenetics, women struggling with autoimmune, cancer, inflammation, learning how to find balance, getting back to our ancestral nature, and my personal favorite piece of information from this week's episode is learning how to flip your epigenetics, because it is not as complicated as everyone makes it sound. He gives you literal things you can do right now. You can turn off the episode after you listen to it and flip your epigenetics within 8 weeks just by doing the most simple thing ever. So don't think that you have to whip out a to-do list of all the things that you have to do now to flip your epigenetics. Dr. David Bilstrom is going to give you something you can do tonight before you go to bed and tomorrow when you wake up in the morning that will start to enhance your epigenetic health and quality. So with that, guys, enjoy this week's episode. I personally was so interested in the topic. I've been so interested in having people on the podcast who are, yes, and trauma and physical or spiritual. And, there's just so many yes ands happening in the podcast, in my podcast this year. And mostly I was super interested in having him on the podcast because I've been struggling with a lot of this stuff. I want to learn more. And I know that whatever I'm going through, there's got to be other people in my community who are navigating it as well. And even if you're not somebody who struggles with autoimmune, he gives you practical tools and supplements and just little things you can do every single day to improve your mental, spiritual, and physical health. I'll end the intro with saying this. If you are somebody who is new to family constellation therapy and new to intuitive work, and the information that you hear on today's episode really intrigues you, go to Dr. David Bilstrom's website. Go take in all of the free information that he has. I was just checking it out. It's phenomenal. And know that you are supported by so many people out there who can align with your values and help you live healthy. There is hope, mind, body, and spirit, that you can be healthy from the inside out and the outside in. So, with that, guys, enjoy this week's episode, and don't forget to rate, subscribe, and review this week's episode. Screenshot all of that and send it to me on Instagram, because at the end of each month, on the very last day, I give away a free intuitive reading to anyone who rates, subscribes, and reviews the podcast, screenshots it, and sends it to me in my DMs on Instagram. The reason I need you to send it to me on Instagram is because that's where I announce the winner, and that's how I know how to find you. Everything is linked below in the show notes. And I will see you next week. Everyone, I am so excited to have Dr. David Bilstrom on the podcast today to talk about a very personal topic in my life, and I know for many of you as well, navigating women's health, autoimmune, and generational trauma. So with that, Dr. Bilstrom, thank you for being on the Heal with Kat podcast.
Oh, my pleasure, Kat. Thank you for having me.
I'm really intrigued to understand kind of your life story and what brought you into working in this specialty and in this field, because I know sometimes people's personal lives really do inspire their passions and their careers. So I'd love to hear more about you.
Yeah, well, thank you. So originally, I was a spinal cord injury rehabilitation physician. So everybody that I would see was paralyzed from the neck down or the waist down. And this is a very challenging population, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all that. And super complex. So the rehab docs would end up becoming their primary care physicians, because something like a little over-the-counter sinus medicine that you and I wouldn't even think twice about taking, well, if they did it, it could actually kill them. And so you have to really know spinal cord injury to help them in all areas. But they have such multi-organ system issues, so much going on, and there's just not a lot of medicines to take care of that kind of stuff. And they're particularly prone to side effects. So even if you find a medicine and you ramp up on the dose, the side effects are so problematic, you got to stop it and go someplace else. And then after a while, I was saying, well, wouldn't it be lovely if there was something else out there for these folks that could help them in all these different areas? And wouldn't it be lovely if it had no side effects, which is a pretty tall order when it comes to Western allopathic medicine. The meds that tend to get used always have a ton of side effects, right? And it's like, ugh, yeah. And so a lot of times the side effects outweigh the benefit. But acupuncture kept popping up as good for all these different kind of things, and really no side effects. And so there was nobody near me that was doing acupuncture in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I said, well, I must have to train for it myself. And so I trained at UCLA, and then came back. And at the time I had 11 different rehab partners. So we were the ones that everybody with any kind of chronic health issue that nobody else could help them with would be sent to us, including traumatic brain injury, pediatrics, stroke rehab, you name it, all this kind of stuff. So I came back, and all my partners were very excited to have another option that might help. And oh my gosh, did it help so much more than I ever thought it would. I was still sort of a bit of a snob when it comes to, Western allopathic medicine is the way, and this thing that's been around 5,000 years, hopefully it can help. I mean, I was pretty stupid, because it's like, well, nothing sticks around for 5,000 years if it doesn't help most people, right? And
Totally.
It's used everywhere in the world and all this kind of stuff. And so like, oh my gosh, this works so much better than I ever thought. And pretty quickly, I started doing about 100 acupuncture treatments a week. And I did that for quite a few years in big hospital systems, seeing everything under the sun. Things that you might say, oh, that sounds logical for acupuncture. And then things you go like, oh, I didn't know you could do acupuncture for that. Including I'm 6 for 6 bringing people out of comas with acupuncture.
No way.
Who are like in the intensive care unit for months. They don't wake up. They can maybe get them off the breathing machine, maybe get them off the dialysis machine. They just wouldn't wake up. And eventually, months and months into this, somebody says, isn't there somebody that has acupuncture around here? Can they do anything? And 5 out of the 6 times, it took 15 minutes. One time I had to come back the next day and do another 15 minutes. And within 15 minutes, they just wake up and go, hey, where am I? And then they're out the door the next day. And so you can really impact the body in a wonderful way. Now, acupuncture basically works by getting the body to fix itself. And that was kind of a bit of a new thing for me, because that's not how most medicine works. But then it really got me thinking pretty quickly, well, what else is out there that I didn't learn about in my traditional training that might be able to help, these folks with these chronic health issues. And with acupuncture, I was seeing people with every chronic health issue you can imagine, not just the spinal cord injured population, the paralyzed population. And so from there, I trained in integrative medicine, functional medicine being trying to ask the question, well, why do people get what they get? And by knowing why they get it, we're in a position to reverse the process. And pretty quickly, the population with autoimmune disease, where you're attacking your own body parts, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, there's hundreds of different, there's 100 different names. It's really just one disease that can attack any body part.
Mhm.
But this is why it's so easy once you get one chronic health issue, not just autoimmune, but one chronic health issue, it's so easy to get a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth. Because if you don't fix why you got the first thing, the why keeps pushing you the wrong direction and you keep getting more on top of the original. And the medications that typically just put bandages on symptoms don't address the why. And it might temporarily help you, it might not. But you keep getting new stuff all the time. And then a second med, a third med, a fourth, 15 meds, and you're still like feeling like crud. And so I was starting to see the population a lot with autoimmune disease, where you're attacking your own body parts. And the traditional meds that are used for that basically just put a bandage in a bullet hole, a couple of symptoms, but don't fix why. So you keep feeling worse and worse and all this. And then I read this heart-wrenching story of this really famous journalist who I read about in the New York Times about how she was losing her career and her life to lupus, one of the autoimmune diseases. And her story is one I'd heard hundreds, if not 1,000 times at that time. I have these health issues that are getting worse and worse. I go to doctor after doctor. Nobody knows what's wrong. And it's 3 years, it's 5 years. And oh my gosh. And then somebody finally goes, oh, well, you have this autoimmune thing. And then you ask, well, how did I get it? Well, we have no idea how you get that stuff. Well, how do you make it go away? Well, there's no way we make it go away. You're going to have it for life. And we can give you some medicines that will temporarily put, a bandage on a few symptoms, but it's going to keep getting worse and worse. Mm-hmm. And so here she was, she finally got the answer what she had. And she was offered, basically just a bandage, temporary bandage. And her quality of life, of course, terrible. She couldn't work, couldn't do it. And I go, this is so sad. I've heard this so many times. Somebody has to change the way autoimmune disease and chronic disease in general is dealt with worldwide. And then I've been on about a decade mission to change that.
You mentioned the word allopathic or allopathic medicine. What does that word mean?
So allopathic medicine is basically Western medicine.
Okay.
The traditional Western medicine where we tend to offer a medicine for a symptom, but they don't tend to actually address why you get things. And this is, Western allopathic medicine kind of started in Paris in the 1820s. Hospital-based medicine, hospital-based medical education. And then that kind of made its way over to the United States. And so this is where everybody goes to hospitals, not just for the medical education, but for their medical care. But the medical care is really great when it comes to like traumas. There's no place better in the world than the United States. If you get a terrible trauma, the emergency room docs, the emergency room people, the trauma surgeons, all this kind of stuff. If you need surgery, we can take care of it. And but we're not good at all with kind of this traditional allopathic Western medicine with chronic disease. We keep trying to, say, well, let's do a surgery. Here's a medication. Kind of the traditional stuff that we've sort of been trained in, but just does not do the trick when it comes to chronic disease and does absolutely nothing for prevention, of course. Absolutely nothing for prevention. And it's very sad to me, including we had last month Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And on TV, everybody talked about breast cancer awareness. All these docs were on the talk shows. And I kept hearing over and over again, the key to breast cancer is early detection. And I'm like, oh, come on. You're not going to do anything to prevent it. Nothing. You're not going to teach anything to prevent it. All you're going to do is just sit there and wait for somebody to get it. And then when they get it, we're going to detect it early. I'm saying you're missing the point. We could probably prevent 95% of all breast cancer. And for the people that kind of slip through the cracks, well, early detection is great. But I was so appalled at that. I did a whole series of videos about how you prevent breast cancer, including what drives autoimmune disease. The system to attack its own body part drives all chronic disease.
Mm.
Cancer is the flip side of the same coin, this autoimmune disease. So everything that drives autoimmune disease drives cancer. Anything you do to prevent autoimmune disease prevents cancer. Anything you do to reverse autoimmune disease prevents cancer. Anything you do to when somebody gets cancer to address why they got the cancer, because ideally with cancer, you say, well, let's get rid of the cancer. Surgery, radiation, chemo, whatever. But you got to go back and address why they got the cancer in the first place.
Mm.
Otherwise, the why keeps pushing you back to the same cancer again or a new cancer. And it's so sad when I see, and clearly I grew up playing tennis and I played tennis in college, in a top 20 team. And I see women in tennis, some of the women that were, sort of my idols growing up, they've had breast cancer twice, 3 times. Well, they had breast cancer. Now they got this other cancer. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so sad. Nobody's addressing why you get this stuff, preventing in the first place, but nobody's even addressing why you get a health issue so that you get rid of the health issue and you've done your due diligence to prevent new stuff over time.
I have such a personal connection to so much of what you're saying. It's kind of giving me this little feeling in my stomach of like, oh, somebody that understands someone like me. I was pushed around a lot in the Western medical system with endometriosis, gut issues, thyroid issues. I've tested positive for RA before, Epstein-Barr, and I know a lot of people have these things, but it just goes to show, I think, how many of us are walking around with these physical ailments and we don't understand that there is a root cause. And it took me 33 years for someone to finally, a functional doctor, to finally look at me and go, I think this issue, all of your issues are tied to a gut issue, tied to streptococcus that you received from scarlet fever when you were a kid. Like someone after 33 years of going through surgeries and all kinds of medicine and all different kind of avenues was finally able to say, hey, I think I know the root cause. So it's really empowering to talk to somebody like you who truly cares about the root cause and understanding and having the knowledge to look at someone like me and go, hey, we can find a root cause. It's not impossible. And a lot of things that went through my mind, you touch on the cancer topic, is like if we have so-called found cures for cancer, like let's just say that that's true, then how come we haven't found the root cause for so many other things? If cancer is supposed to be this big scary thing that so many people are dying from, shouldn't there be explanations for some of the lesser aggressive physical issues, like with their illnesses that they're dealing with? So I guess, why is autoimmune disease growing at such an alarming rate? If we have all these resources and we have all these people in the world like you who are trying to do so much for it, why is it still growing so quickly?
Well, I think even the bigger picture to that question is why is all chronic disease of all kinds growing at an exponential rate? We even have a title for these things that are so much more common now than they used to be. They're called the civilization diseases. Yeah. And so things like type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, gut issues and autoimmune disease, high blood pressure, cholesterol, cancers. Guys are getting, or women are getting cancer in their 20s. Colon cancer used to be an older person's disease. Now it's all these people in their 20s getting colon cancer. Cataracts and macular degeneration, all these eye issues, all these brain issues. So like in kids, all this neuroinflammation. So in kids, if it's not autism spectrum disorder, it's developmental delay. Well, if it's not that, it's ADD or ADHD. Well, if it's not that, it's anxiety, depression, and suicide attempts. Well, if it's not that, it's migraines and seizures. And then in the adult population, you're dealing with so much brain stuff, including here we got this epidemic of all the neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, Lou Gehrig's disease. We just got, obesity, all this kind of stuff. And you go, holy cow, where's all this stuff coming from? Well, fortunately, so the question you said, well, why do we have so much autoimmune disease? It's a question like, well, why do we have all these civilization diseases? Because this is where chronic disease of all kinds is the same thing that's driving autoimmune disease. And we see this in developing nations. As people change their lifestyles, change their eating habits, lose their traditional practices. We got environmental toxins. We're eating foods that are super high processed. They're not even foods I talk about, I mean, like food-like substances. They're not even food, right? And also toxic light, blue light, artificial light at night.
Mhm.
Um, Artificial light at night, light pollution drives cancer, obesity, diabetes, heart attacks and strokes, all these kind of things. Um, an article I just read in the International Journal of Molecular Science from 2022 talks about light pollution and cancer. And this is the mechanism of even small amounts of light at night that hit our eyeballs. Back of our eyes, we have the retina. Most retinal cells are what they call image forming retinal cells. Light hits the image forming retinal cells. They project information up to the visual cortex part of the brain so we can see images like we're seeing each other right now.
Yeah.
Which I'm very thankful that we get a chance to see each other. But then these non-image forming retinal cells, oh my gosh, are these things cool. Light hits them and they project to all these different brain parts involved in our metabolism and our feeding practices. Do we overeat? Do we eat outside of mealtime?
Oh,
Do we
wow.
gain weight? I mean, epidemic proportions, right?
Wow.
Mood issues, part of the brain about mood called the perihabanula. We have an epidemic of mood disorders, right? Depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, emotions.
Yes.
The amygdala, super important emotions. We have an epidemic of emotional issues. It projects to the hypothalamus, which is part of the HPA axis, which is how the body deals with stress. And this is part of everything: cardiovascular disease history, immune system issues, inflammation control, hormones getting thrown off. But then also it projects to the part of the brain that's the master clock, the part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus that oversees the 24-hour circadian rhythm in every cell in our body. And when that circadian rhythm gets thrown off, it throws off everything: the immune system, inflammation control, you name it, it throws it off, including it throws off the intestinal microbiome, the mix of good, bad bugs in the gut.
Huh.
So, um, infrared is the most therapeutic. And that's most powerful the first 3 hours after sunrise. So, we talk to our patients about getting your eyeballs outside, no sunglasses, glasses, or contacts. All it takes is 2 minutes, 2 or more minutes of early morning sunlight within the first 3 hours after sunrise. Now, there's some benefit from the UVA, ultraviolet A and B. So, nice to get your eyeballs out for 2+ minutes multiple times a day. But it hits these non-image forming retinal cells, projects to all these different brain parts. Oh my gosh, does it fix the system? It resets the circadian rhythm. We get a healthy HPA axis so our body can deal with stress well: physical, emotional, spiritual stress. Our body can deal with stress so much better: mood, emotions, metabolism, intestinal microbiome.
Mhm.
This is such an important central mechanism. I was lucky enough to speak in Paris in June about the 4 maternal microbiomes that during pregnancy, that drive the development of the fetal microbiomes before a child's born, including uh, the fetal intestinal microbiome. They're setting up a healthy gut microbiome before they're even born, and they're trying to set up a healthy placental microbiome. So there's optimal crosstalk back and forth between the baby and the mom. A third of the way through the pregnancy, about 3 months in, there are a lot of baby parts still to be formed, right? 6 more months of baby parts coming. The baby's eyes have already formed these non-image forming retinal cells. They don't have the
Wow.
rods and cones, the image forming ones, but they form these non-image forming retinal cells. So baby's eyes start seeing light coming through the abdominal and the uterine wall about a third of the way through pregnancy. And all the science tells us, because this is not somebody's opinion, I'm just talking the science here. Okay, this is the science, but the science is very clear about this stuff. This is foundational for the baby to develop all these important parts of their brain: metabolism, feeding practices, moods, emotions, how their body deals with stress. They're trying to set up a healthy HPA axis in their little bodies before they're even born so they can deal with stress that might be happening to the mom and, of course, the child during pregnancy. But also, they're setting up the master clock that oversees the circadian rhythm of every cell in the body. One reason why during pregnancy the babies develop a circadian rhythm independent of the mom, where they may want to sleep when the mom's awake, and they may want to be awake when the mom wants to be asleep.
Yeah.
Right?
I've
You know,
heard that.
but this is such a central mechanism to how everything is formed originally. We can use those same pathways to reverse chronic disease. Now, I started with the corollary where, of course, anything good, there's got to be something bad, right? And so this is blue light and artificial light. And so this International Journal of Molecular Science, Light Pollution and Cancer 2022, talks about how just low levels of light, like in cities, other people's backyard lights, all this, oh my gosh, does that whack the system, including a profound increase in cancer, diabetes, obesity, you name it, um, including we do a Wellness Wednesday where we send out an email every Wednesday. So 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, we talked about how artificial light at night, including our lights in our homes that have a lot of blue light, not just the screens and the tablets and all this stuff we use, but just the artificial light at night within our own homes, um, is so toxic to the system, drives all this kind of stuff because it's hitting these important retinal cells, but just whacking the whole system, including their circadian rhythm, that women with breast cancer in allopathic medicine, typically the only thing they're offered to prevent it from coming back after the surgery, the radiation, whatever, is tamoxifen. Now, I think it's very sad. There's ever so many things that you can do to prevent it from coming back or prevent it in the first place, right? So tamoxifen is the only thing that women are offered. Artificial light at night totally stops the tamoxifen from working and
Oh,
preventing it from coming back. So all these women who think they're using a medicine that is going to help them prevent the breast cancer from coming back are getting no benefit whatsoever because of artificial light at night. It
who
also
knew? Who knew it could be so
negatively impacts
profound?
the chemo that they used to try to get rid of in the first place. And
Oh,
so this lovely article, this is the Cancer Research 2014. So this is 10 years old. Circadian and melatonin disruption by exposure to light at night drives resistance to tamoxifen therapy in breast cancer. So they talk about it doesn't work with artificial light at night. It's not hard to avoid. Pop on some high quality blue light blocking glasses when you're on screens and tablets consistently for 2 hours before bedtime. If you wake up in the middle of the night, pop them on before you turn on a light or look at your phone or something like that.
wow.
But they also talk about this article. You it does this because artificial light at night stops you from making melatonin,
Oh,
and
wow.
without melatonin, you get breast cancer, you get heart attacks, you get strokes, you get osteoporosis, you get Alzheimer's, all this kind of stuff. But you just give the person that's using tamoxifen melatonin, it resets the circadian rhythm, but also it gets the tamoxifen to start working. So they actually say, well, in women with tamoxifen, we aren't getting a benefit. Just give them melatonin, so it resets the circadian rhythm, and now the tamoxifen can actually do its work. It's so simple and
Mhm.
so safe, but nobody knows this information.
When I hear you speak about how profound all of this information is, what goes through my head is, wow, our civilization, specifically in the US, we are in survival mode. Between the food system, the Western medical system, between technologies advancing, there's almost like our bodies haven't caught up to the modernization of our outside world. We're still functioning on that very ancestral plane in many ways. And yet we forget the divine intelligence that lives within all of us, that our body is always trying to help us. That's something that I learned on my autoimmune journey is your body is fighting itself to try to protect you and help you. But we have to kind of introduce other belief systems, energies, supplements, foods, so your body's not in survival mode all the time and in attack mode. But I'm curious to understand more because we've been talking a lot about lifestyle and technology and all of that. But generational trauma is a huge driver of autoimmune disease, and specifically in women. And most women and their doctors are unaware of the link of epigenetics and the generational aspects of autoimmune disease. Why is that?
Well, we're still thinking bandages and bullet holes,
Okay.
which is unfortunate. But there's two major things that will drive ancestral trauma is trauma that's happened to past generations that would impact us. And so a big one is epigenetics. We used to think that our genes that make up our DNA in our cells, that tell the cells what to do, that our genes, our DNA were hardwired. Whatever we got, good, bad, otherwise, and we're kind of stuck with it. And if you look at past generations and you go, geez, they got some health issues I don't want, I hope I got the good stuff, not the bad stuff. Well, it turns out it's not what genes you have, it's which ones get turned on and turned off. So this is called epigenetics, the things that alter gene expression without changing the genetic code itself. And so then it turns out we have a lot of bad genes in every cell in our body, got to turn them off. A lot of good genes, we got to turn them on. Well, when people aren't feeling well, they've turned on the bad, turned off the good. And this is why it's so easy, once again, once you get one health issue, to get a second, third, fourth, fifth, all these things, because every cell in the body is being told the wrong information.
Oh, wow.
Altered epigenetics, if it's not corrected before somebody conceives a child, is passed on to the next 6 to 8 generations. Yeah. We're the product of the previous 6 to 8 generations. And this is where if somebody had, trauma, their genes got flipped the wrong way. And it was going to really impact their own health, right? But if they didn't get flipped the right way before they had a child, they now pass us on to the next 6 to 8 generations. It was kicked on down the way there. And so it's really not hard to fix epigenetics. It might seem like, wow, it's probably really complicated to fix that. I'm like, no. This is where Harvard did a study about 15, 16 years ago now, where a couple of previous studies suggested a meditation works through epigenetics. And they said, well, we're Harvard, we're going to get our best researcher on this, and because if we know, we'll be able to figure this out. Well, they took this large group of people that between every day for 3 to 28 years have done some kind of relaxation, something, meditation, repetitive prayer, deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, visual imagery, all these different kind of things, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, all this kind of stuff. And then they took a group of people that had never done any of this stuff, and they looked at their epigenetics, and they saw that there was about 2,000 genes that were flipped differently between the two groups. And they said, well, that's fascinating. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this group that's never done this stuff, and we're going to teach them meditation. And we're going to ask them to do 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 8 weeks. And then we're going to retest them and see if anything's happened. Well, human nature being what it is, Harvard says, hey, all you guys got to give us is 8 weeks, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Well, on average, people did it 15 minutes a day, 3 days a week for the 8 weeks. So even Harvard can't get people to do it perfectly, right? The part of the end of the story is that we always tell people you don't need to be perfect, just perfect enough. Okay, the body's too smart to require perfection. So after 8 weeks, they retested. Well, of the 2,000 genes that were expressed differently between the two groups, the new meditators had flipped 400 of the genes that were expressed differently before, flipped in the same way as the long-term people. And they go, well, this is fascinating. What do those genes do? Those are the genes that code for inflammation and inflammation control. And they go, oh my gosh, this is why meditation works for everything, because you're flipping genes the right way in every cell in your body that keep away the inflammation that drive the chronic disease. And so they thought that was profound. What I thought was, it only took 8 weeks.
Yeah.
You don't even have to do it perfect. People didn't even do it like Harvard said. It only takes 8 weeks. It's not like you got to do this stuff for 5 years to get some benefit. It's like your body is so smart at healing. It just starts flipping stuff, and it's just fascinating.
This gives me so much hope. I can't even begin to tell you, a lot of my work that I do with family constellation therapy, I'm always talking about the epigenetic parts of what we inherit. And I've always heard, 7 to 14 generations, you can flip these genes and just by doing your healing work. But it just gives me, and I hope it gives the listeners, so much incredible hope that just by doing something so simple to help regulate your nervous system and lower inflammation, how profound it is. You don't even have to do family constellation therapy. That's like an added benefit. All you have to do is meditate. I just feel so much hope. Even for myself, because I do worry a lot. Am I breaking enough cycles? I don't want to pass on endometriosis if I have a daughter. I don't want to pass on inflammation in the womb. I don't want to pass on, if I have streptococcus overgrowth in my gut, pass that into the baby in the womb. Like, I have all these worries about, am I doing enough? But you're saying, what it sounds like you're saying, rather, I don't want to assume, is that the nervous system is regulating the body enough to not be in fight or flight. So then the inflammation is not happening. Like, is that a connection to it at all? Hey Hey guys, it's Kat popping in during the episode today to tell you about my free cycle breaker quiz. Do you ever feel stuck in the same family patterns or even feel like the black sheep of your family and not in a good way? I felt like that my entire life. What if I told you that you could transform that role into something way more powerful, more meaningful, and more magical? With my cycle breaker quiz, I created this to help you understand the childhood coping tools that you are still replaying in your adult life. They're still showing up. And by understanding how you show up with your family and the role that you play, this can be the portal into understanding the patterns of your entire lineage just by looking at you. Whether you're the parentified child, the comedian, the rebel, the hyper independent, or like me, the caregiver, this quiz will give you the insights that you need to reframe any resentment about how your childhood has shaped you. Once you take the quiz, you'll get a short and personalized podcast episode in your email inbox that dives into your archetype, helping you see the strengths that you've gained from growing up in this complex family. I'll even share with you the potential challenges that you may be facing as this archetype. And I'll even share with you a spirit animal to work with along the way, because who doesn't love a good spirit animal? The shift from black sheep to cycle breaker is a powerful one, and I want to support you along the way. Ready to embrace your role? All you have to do is go to catdao.com/cycle breaker to take the quiz. Again, that's catdao.com/cycle breaker to take the quiz. Your transformation from black sheep to cycle breaker starts right now.
Yeah, everything is connected, right?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and so the body is trying to do this epigenetic thing on its own. So a real big central mechanism for chronic disease, chronic health issues, autoimmune included, is every cell in the body has vitamin D receptors, because vitamin D is needed by every cell in the body. There's more vitamin D receptors in the gut than any other body part. And when the researchers back in 2016 they go, oh my gosh, no wonder vitamin D is so important for gut health. So what happens though is these vitamin D receptors become resistant to vitamin D, similar to insulin resistance, where you may have the hormone insulin to control blood sugar, but if your insulin receptors are resistant, it can't attach and do the work. It's almost like you don't have insulin, blood sugar goes up towards diabetes. Well, when the vitamin D receptors become resistant to vitamin D, oh my gosh, is that a mess? When you fix it, and it's not hard, takes three things: daily vitamin D, daily probiotics, and something called butyrate. Now, most people know vitamin D and probiotics, but they may not know butyrate. Well, butyrate is a short chain fatty acid that should be made by the good bacteria in the gut. The good bacteria in the gut make serotonin, GABA, melatonin that make short chain fatty acids, well, like butyrate. And so by taking those three things together, butyrate comes in a capsule form. You fix the gut in a way that fixes everything. So the original data was this is exactly what you want to do to get rid of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, which are the autoimmune diseases of the gut, but also recurrent H. pylori, recurrent C. diff, these terrible infections. When the vitamin D receptors become sensitive, and now you got vitamin D to do the work, good bacteria go up, bad bacteria come down. The gut heals, it heals everything. 6 months later, they said, oh my gosh, this is a nuclear weapon against metabolic syndrome, abnormal weight gain, obesity, diabetes, cholesterol issues, all these kind of things. Harvard Journal of Psychiatry, a couple of years after that, says, wow, if you can fix the gut microbiome this way, you can treat major depressive disorder. Another journal says, hey, this changes personality traits. People become more outgoing and more social. And what you're basically doing is you're getting the good bacteria up so they can actually make more of the butyrate themselves. Breast cancer is driven by this vitamin D receptor resistance. Big article that I did a whole series of videos on last month, talks about, well, you can fix why you get breast cancer and prevent it by fixing these vitamin D receptors that become resistant, leading to disruption of the intestinal microbiome, leading to the leaky gut, leading to translocation of bad bugs from the gut into the bloodstream that go to the breast tissue, driving breast cancer. And they go, yeah, all you got to do is use butyrate, probiotics, and vitamin D. And butyrate almost exclusively works through epigenetics. So your good bacteria are making this butyrate to flip genes the right way in every cell in the body. One reason why butyrate prevents cancer 5 different ways. It fixes eye issues, lung issues, brain issues, because it's flipping genes the right way every place in the body. Now, when that early morning sunlight, this goes back to my lecture in Paris.
Yeah.
Well, how do a woman optimize her 4 microbiomes and get the baby microbiomes good during pregnancy? Well, that early morning sunlight, when it hits the abdomen directly, the infrared goes deep. You build your good bacteria in your gut. You get rid of the bad bacteria in the gut. It optimizes epigenetics, not just by the eyeball seeing it, going to that master clock, telling the gut how to do this. The sunlight directly in the abdomen does it too, including when the sunlight hits your abdomen, the good bacteria that are produced are predominantly the butyrate producing good bacteria. Sunlight's helping you make something that works almost exclusively through epigenetics. And not only do you have more of the butyrate producing good bacteria, but epigenetically, the sunlight increases the action of 3 different genes in those good bacteria that make butyrate, so they can make more butyrate.
Huh.
And then when the butyrate is released into the gut to go to the wall of the gut, where the butyrate receptors are to tell the gut how to make serotonin, melatonin, GABA, all this other kind of cool stuff, the sunlight increases the sensitivity of the butyrate receptors so the butyrate can attach and do more work. And the sunlight. It's like, oh my gosh, the body is so cool, right? It's making this stuff, including the other thing that drives generational trauma is disrupted intestinal microbiome. That gets passed down from mother to child to the next generation because one of the 4 microbiomes in a pregnant woman, the intestinal microbiome, is so important for fetal microbiome development, is the intestinal microbiome. And if that's disrupted, it disrupts the early fetal intestinal microbiome, fetal microbiomes in general, and then now you've passed down a bad gut to the next generation and the next generation, but it's not hard to fix, right? Get your belly and your eyes out. Vitamin D, probiotic, and butyrate fixes the vitamin D receptor resistance. Now you got all this stuff going the right way, including by fixing the gut the right way, you actually fix epigenetics at the same time.
So when I was healing SIBO, H. pylori, and inflammation in my gut this year, it was a brutal detox that I've been through. My functional doctor had me take butyrate or how do you say it?
Butyrate.
Butyrate, yeah. And
Mhm.
I fell off the wagon taking it because I'm taking so many other things, but now I want to just run to my cabinet and go take it every day because I had no clue there was an epigenetic tie to it.
Yeah.
Why do autoimmune diseases show up more often for women and men? And it kind of I'd kind of like if you could explain maybe some of the emotional parts of it too, because what I'm hearing you say is kind of confirming what everyone is saying, right? You have emotional issues, it's stuck energy in the body that creates physical issues that then creates all of these problems. So why women? Why are we the ones carrying this around?
Yeah. So 2 reasons. One goes back to epigenetics. So there are so many bad genes on the X chromosome. Women get 2 copies of the X, guys get 1 X, 1 Y.
Right.
There's so many bad genes on the X chromosome. For a woman to be optimally healthy, she has to shut down at least 85% of all the genes on the second X chromosome. Otherwise, there's too much estrogen, that's too much X chromosome influence on the system. Almost has to shut down an entire chromosome in every cell in your body. Oh my gosh, that is not easy. Kind of thing. So that ties into epigenetics. And the other one is what I call the most dangerous disease for women, which is estrogen dominance. Too much estrogen, not enough progesterone, or relatively more estrogen than progesterone. It is the driver of all the hormonal menstrual things, including what you experienced and what so many women experience nowadays: bad flows, bad cramps, premenstrual syndrome, ovarian cyst, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids, endometriosis, fibrocystic breast disease, infertility. That is all estrogen dominance.
Oh, wow.
Because estrogen revs and progesterone calms, it drives rev without calm stuff in women. I seem to be too much of a worrier. I'm more anxious than I want to be. I don't really sleep great. I might even get panic attacks.
Yeah.
Well, that's the estrogen dominance also. And when you look at our world today, what woman doesn't have? 1, 2, multiple of either the hormonal menstrual things or the rev without calm stuff. It is so common nowadays. It didn't used to be. Women that I saw like 10, 15 years ago in their 80s, your menstrual history. Oh, well, I had my flow every month. Yeah, never varied. It was like 2 to 3 days, no big deal. Oh, how about menopause? Well, just one day I didn't have my cycles anymore, so I figured that must have been menopause. You never hear that anymore,
No, you
right? You
never
never hear that
do.
anymore, right? But this estrogen dominance not only drives that stuff, but what we do to try to take care of it can even make it worse. So in most women, when you have this estrogen dominance driving this hormonal menstrual stuff, they're offered birth control pills, oral birth control pills. Well, they put you in menopause. And menopause is fine, but not so much for people in their teens, 20s, and 30s, and all this kind of stuff. But they're estrogen based. So now they made the estrogen dominance worse.
Mm.
Okay, well, now it's gotten so bad. We think you need a hysterectomy or an ovary out or something like that. We need to change your anatomy down there in some way. Any change in the anatomy down there makes the estrogen dominance worse.
Oh,
So this is such a disruptor of the immune system. And the immune system is this beautiful example of how the body loves balance. You never want to be too high or too low in anything. There's
yeah.
always a sweet spot in the middle, right? So like blood pressure, blood sugar, you don't want to be too high, but you don't want to be too low either, right? There's always a sweet spot. The immune system is so fascinating. When you lose that set point right in the middle of the immune system, you move away from it both up and down at the same time. So the overactive immune system issues are all the autoimmune diseases, also allergies, asthma, and eczema. The underactive immune system issues are colds and flus and infections. And I get the same infection over and over again. The infections that drive chronic disease that gets missed by so many people, including functional medicine people, specific infections that drive chronic disease. You mentioned Epstein-Barr virus. There's mycoplasma. Coxsackie virus is the one in the gut that gets out and goes to the breast tissue and causes breast cancer. It gets out of the gut, goes to the pancreas. Pancreas starts making insulin, type 1 diabetes, all this kind of stuff, all these infections. And then cancer. And this is where cancer is the flip side of the same coin as autoimmune disease. So the science is very clear. What takes the immune system and goes, throws it off. It's very clear what we got to do to bring it back to the middle. And this is what we're trying to teach people is this is why this happens. And this is tied into everything. 70% of all autism is one particular autoimmune disease. Pretty much all other neurologic issues of childhood, the same autoimmune disease. Here's heart attacks and strokes. Here's osteoporosis. Here's Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. It's all tied together, right? All these civilization diseases. And we got to bring people back together. That estrogen dominance is huge at doing this. And this is one reason, the other reason besides the epigenetics of the X chromosome, that 80% of people that get autoimmune disease are women. But it is a humongo driver, of course, of cancer. So women that have estrogen dominance before menopause don't just have twice the risk of breast cancer before the menopause of anybody else, or 3 times. They have a 5.4 times greater risk of breast cancer before menopause of anybody else. 5 times plus the risk, and a 10 times greater risk of malignant cancers their whole life, the ones that start one place and travel other places, which you don't want at all. And so we're really trying to educate people and women particularly that when you got all the hormonal menstrual stuff, any of that stuff, or the red without calm stuff, you have estrogen dominance. You're going this way. We want to fix it. Get rid of all the hormonal menstrual stuff. Get rid of the red without calm stuff because it all stinks. You don't want any of that stuff, right? But let's get rid of it and you feel better. But then we've done our due diligence to keep you from going whoop, and ending up with not only the autoimmune, but cancer and all these civilization diseases all at the same time. And once again, it's not that hard. People just don't know that you can do it and what these things mean. They don't understand what the hormonal menstrual red without calm stuff means and what it means. What you're going like, uh-oh, I can see your future. Let's do what we got to do now. And we can see this stuff coming a mile away, right? 10 miles away. It's not that hard to prevent that stuff if you kind of know what the things mean that somebody's already experiencing.
Well, and it makes me think of how I was put on birth control for 10 years with no period, for 10 years, all of my 20s, to suppress the endometriosis. And then when I was 29 rather, I got off the birth control and all of a sudden I had it's like it was purging out of me the cystic acne, the depression, the anxiety, the bloating, the gut issues. And at the time, I wasn't educated enough to understand that there's a root cause. I'm not stuck with this stuff forever rather. So it's interesting how Western medicine, like you said, wants to put a Band-Aid on it, do a quick fix, get you out the door. But there's people like you out there who want to help people get to the root cause and then do it for the long term, which is so relieving. What are some of the fastest ways? Because in today's society, we do want fast, we want ease, we want efficiency is a luxury, right? What are some of the most efficient, I'll rather say that, ways to start reversing autoimmune disease that are tangible for people?
Well, I think we built on that concept because we say, well, all you got to do is like sit and meditate if you want to for 8 weeks and you're going to be flipping genes.
True.
Hey, that sounds fast. That sounds easy. Give me easy and fast. And we're like, uh-oh.
True.
But that's okay because the body's so smart, you can get fast and easy kind of a thing. And so anything you do to create calm helps the body fix anything. We talk a lot about getting out in nature. Even indoor house plants have been shown to reset cortisol, that HPA axis, looking out a window. Your body is calmer. It fixes the HPA axis. Your body deals with stress better. Getting outside and doing any of that kind of stuff, including get your eyeballs outside, is a big one because the gut's such a central mechanism. The foundational triad of vitamin D, probiotic, and butyrate is so important at fixing the gut in a way that allows you to fix everything. And if you got chronic inflammation driving chronic disease, you have these infections that drive chronic disease. And that even gets missed by most functional medicine docs. And not a lot of functional medicine docs are talking about light and its negative and positive impact on the system yet either. So we use a product out of Canada called pH structured silver solution. So it's a nano silver product that will get rid of any infection. Doesn't matter where it is in your body. Doesn't even matter if you know which ones we're dealing with or not. It'll get rid of them. So we can do blood tests to find these guys. Any lab can run the blood test to find the ones that have gotten into our bloodstream. They're driving chronic stuff outside of the gut. The digestive stool analyses will find the bad bugs in the gut, that kind of stuff. And this nano silver product is an absolute game changer. I did a video not too long ago, kind of talking about this, and I said, hey, look at this Journal of Tropical Medicine from 20. It says it even kills malaria. Isn't that awesome? It really gets rid of all this stuff, including when I was in Paris, and I'm talking about the oral microbiome's impact on the developing fetal microbiomes, including the oral microbiome in a pregnant woman is the primary microbiome to set up the placental microbiome. And all these articles I got to share about nano silver and dental health and oral health and the use of nanosilver in dentistry. So there are so many studies out there about this nanosilver stuff. Now, we love this one from Canada because its water is structured. They call structured water the fourth phase of water. Solid, liquid, gas, but then this fourth phase. Funky, cool thing. Water molecules start kicking out protons. They start stacking like pallets. They start doing this really amazing stuff. And they help get rid of inflammation and help damaged tissue heal. So at the same time, you're getting rid of the infections that are driving the inflammation and tissue damage, along with the hormone imbalances and the gut disruption and the epigenetics and all this, you're helping the tissue actually heal. And they did this lovely study. We're going to circle back around to where you started a little while ago. They said, okay, we're using this on burn injuries, because we can't have infections on burn injuries because then we got to debride the tissue. It sets us back and all this. But when they used this nano silver product with the structured water, they found that the burn injuries were healing so much faster. And they go, why is that happening? Well, it turns out that skin cells have 88 different genes that code for skin cell healing. The structured water upregulates, the pH structure silver solution upregulates the activity of 59 out of those 88 genes. So skin cells heal quicker. Wow. So even that works through epigenetics. And it's like, oh my gosh, you see all these correlations. Everything kind of ties together with everything else, right? It's all sort of super connected. They're not like, well, this does this does that. It's like, no, it's all super connected. So this is where I tend to find that people might come in to see me and they're on 50 different supplements. And I can look at those and I go, oh my gosh, this is such an intelligent person who educated themselves. I can see the reason why they started everything, given what I see about their history, right? And their health issues. But they're missing these big central mechanisms, kind of the biggest fish to fry. And if they can get the biggest fish to fry, like the couple of things we're talking about, oh my gosh, just to put the system in a place to fix everything at the same time.
This has been so incredibly informative in ways I wasn't even expecting. I thought we were going to go into emotions and stuff, but it does bring together, even for me, this idea that we are multiple parts and all of those parts are part of a whole, and we have to address all of it. And it's actually been personally very confirmatory for me about a lot of things that I stopped taking that I really need to go back and start taking again, just because there's so many benefits with the gut. And I've really struggled this year. So I cannot thank you enough for your area of genius and just all of the work that you're doing to help people, and for coming on the podcast. How can people interact with you more, discover more of your work, even work with you?
So my website is drdavidbilstrom.com. And we have courses for non-medical people. We have courses for medical people. We want to educate everybody about this stuff because we're trying to change the way autoimmune and chronic disease is dealt with worldwide. So
Yeah.
we're trying to have a big goal here. I write blog posts, including, I really encourage people to read the one about early morning sunlight and artificial light at night, those two guys. And we have over 150 different videos about this stuff on our YouTube channel. Each one basically is, hey, by the way, look at this article, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Because I want people to know this is a science. It's not somebody's opinion. I have a book out there for folks, both medical and non-medical people. And we do Q&As every month where people can ask questions and I answer them. And so we're just there to educate people. And of course, if somebody needs some help, but we're trying to teach them where this stuff comes from and how they can do it themselves. But if they need our help, they can always get us. And there's information on the website for that too.
Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. It really gives people like me such tremendous hope that we can heal our bodies and we don't have to live in pain and chronic illness, but also that we don't have to pass it on as well.
Yes, that's so important. Let's make the next generations healthier.
Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh, Dr. Bilstrom, thank you so much for your time. And everybody, we're going to link everything in the show notes. So anything that you were enthusiastic about or influenced by our conversation today, you can find it all below in the show notes. Thank you.